All right, let's get started. We're going to talk about the Team America movie.
Yeah, let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah. I'm just going to start by saying this. My original pick was The Patriot with Mel Gibson. And then because I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I remember Team America being really funny. And I think
plus you'd had a lot to drink when we were having the discussion.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to switch it over because, I want to talk about something funny. And I picked Team America, World Police. And I regret that decision with every fiber of my being because I watched both movies. I watched The Patriot. And then immediately afterwards, I watched Team America. And I was like, fuck. That was a bad decision. So Team America, it's a movie all with filmed with complete miniatures and marionette dolls that were used for all the major action scenes and acting and all that stuff. It's
ridiculous.
It's a ridiculous movie created by the guys who made South Park, and it's all about this special ops team of American soldiers who are sent around the world to share the American values with people who don't want them. And it's filled with vulgar humor, terrible stereotypes, and
a kick-ass soundtrack.
A kick-ass soundtrack, but very offensive things. But I mean, that's as per usual for the South Park guys, so kind of fits the bill. But anyway, I remember I watched this movie probably when it first came out, and I remember thinking it was freaking hilarious. I thought it was the funniest movie ever, and it was so...
How old were you in 2004?
I was in high school, so I would have been a young teenager.
So you're perfect age.
Yeah,
right.
perfect
to think
age
it was funny.
To think it was hilarious. And I watched it just like a couple days ago, and I was like, God, this movie's not funny anymore.
Does not age well.
They said the F word.
It's that stupid humor.
They said bulls.
Yeah, and
They said Durka.
It's so...
The foreign languages in this movie were on point.
Durka Muhammad.
Anyway,
Jihad Durka.
Muhammad Jihad.
The basic plot is this team loses one of its members in a tragic botched operation, and they have to replace him with an actor from Hollywood who has to go undercover as a foreign terrorist.
No, it wasn't from Hollywood.
He wasn't from Hollywood?
No,
he
was from
Broadway.
Broadway, that's right. A Broadway actor.
But he was the best actor.
Best actor ever. Except for Matt Damon. Anyway, so there's hijinks ensue and craziness happens. And like I said 3 times, I think already, I regret picking this movie. I did not enjoy it at all. I was kind of just rolling my eyes most of the time, just kind of like, oh my God, this is... Like, have my sensibilities changed? Has the cancel culture offendedness of the world over the last couple of years just kind of
just grew up,
gotten to me? And I'm like, I don't really like this anymore.
I think this movie is a direct pushback
to that,
to cancel culture, which was very much alive and well back then.
You think so?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's the whole
during the Bush administration.
Matt Parker and Trey Stone, is that right?
Matt Stone,
Trey Parker. I got it backwards. But that's what South Park's been fighting against since day one. That's their thing. They're there to offend.
Yeah.
But they're equal opportunity offenders.
This is also true.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I was watching it and I'm like, I don't really get offended by things, but I just remember watching it and I'm like, wow, that's dirty. It's just like dirty, underhanded jokes at other cultures' expense. But I guess that fits. And, they did the same thing with America, with Hollywood and all that stuff. So, like you said, equal opportunity offenders.
Sure.
But anyway, Matthew Kadish, what did you think about this movie?
I love this movie.
I knew he was going to say that.
Well, it's funny because shortly after this movie came out, I became friends with one of Trey Parker's assistants. And so I had kind of insight into this movie that made me appreciate it a little bit more than I did when I first saw it in the theater.
Oh, okay.
And he just told me stories about it. I just thought it was funny. Like, for instance, when they were making the movie, so in their South Park movie, which came out before this, they had kind of made fun of the Baldwins in there. And Alec Baldwin had heard that he was going to be a character in Team America. And if you know anything about Alec Baldwin, he's got a pretty good sense of humor. So he contacted them and he was like, hey, I heard I'm a character in your upcoming movie.
They're probably like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. They were like,
Alec Baldwin's going to shut us down.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Matt and Trey were like, yeah, you're in our movie.
Is that okay?
And Alec Baldwin was like, well, I really like your stuff. I'd like to play myself in your film. They're like, you want to do your own voice in our movie? And he was like, yeah. They're like, we're going to have to get back to you on that. and so they get together, and Alec Baldwin calls him back and he's like, so can I voice myself in your film? And he's like, and Trey Parker actually said, actually, we got a guy who does your voice better. So we're going to go with him.
They didn't go with Alec Baldwin?
No.
Oh, wow.
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
But it's kind of funny because the making of this movie.
Well, before we get too deep into that, can we get Jude's opinion on this movie real quick?
Sure.
What did you think about it when you watched it?
While I was before we watched it, I was like, oh God, I'm not looking forward to this. This is just like the kind of humor that I just don't find funny.
Yeah.
But while we were watching it, I actually did laugh while we were watching it, but I think it had more to do with all of the alcohol I consumed before we started watching it.
Definitely helpful.
Yeah. I think that's how you have to go into it. It's just lit.
Yeah. That's it?
That's it.
Okay, cool. I appreciated the movie more after I watched it because I went online and I was like, man, I got to step my game up because Kadish has all this like
I know, he's got his
information.
notes again.
So I watched like 3 or 4 different documentaries on the making of, and
Oh,
like
that's the trick. I got to start doing that kind of
and
stuff.
I was watching.
You don't have time to do that, Vader.
Yeah, they were like an hour each.
It's like I got to go back to work pretty soon.
Anyway, so I was just like, besides the humor, like I'm kind of on the same page as Jude. I was just kind of like, I think I need to be drunk and with other people to really appreciate this movie. I was by myself and sober, and it was just like, ugh.
That's not how you want to do that.
No. But I watched the behind the scenes stuff and watching these technicians build these miniature sets and working these puppets and just the technology that went into it. I really did appreciate the effort that there was like thousands of people that were trying to make this movie happen, and it's a lot more difficult than they make it seem. Like you think, oh, it's just a couple of puppets, you put a camera in front of them and you dance them around and make jokes. Like, no, there's a little bit more involved to it. But
also, like, just from the humor standpoint, if you put aside the kind of South Parky type humor, like the movie's actually a very sophisticated satire. Like there's a lot of satirical elements in it that kind of stand the test of time. Like when we were rewatching it, the whole thing about actors thinking that they know better than you about politics because they read stuff. Yeah. And the whole there are 3 types of people in the world: dicks, pussies, and assholes. like that was quite relevant.
Yep. Yep.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. It does have some moments where it's like it speaks to today's like 2020, even though it's, how old is this movie? 2004, you said, right? Wow. Yeah, it still does have some relevant moments where you're watching it and you're like, yeah, man, that's still true today. Even more so, even probably. So I think we need another Team America movie.
Yeah.
Just to set the internet ablaze.
I don't know. As for me, I like the story and I like the humor, but I couldn't get past the look of the puppets. The strings bothered me. All the strings hanging everywhere, and the way they talked was weird.
It's all animatronic.
That was all on purpose.
I know. Yeah. It didn't work for me. It just I didn't like that gag, that part of the movie, and the way they flopped around when they walked and stuff. It was funny.
That was part of the joke.
Yeah, I know. but again, it didn't quite resonate with me, I guess. And
how about that sex scene?
Oh, the sex scene. That was something. Yeah.
There was some
You got to see some boobs,
Yeah.
Vader. Were you excited about that?
There was boobs in the movie.
Boobs, yeah.
Wooden puppet boobs. It's like,
Still counts.
Yeah.
There was this old story at Paramount because I used to work at Paramount Studios
back in
Back in
Hollywood.
Where was
Hollywood.
this?
Yeah.
back in Hollywood. Where so Paramount was the company that financed and released this, and the very first time that Matt and Trey screened stuff for them. So that very opening shot of the movie where it's like this really crappy puppet with a really bad background, and then it's like slowly pans up and you see like how awesome the miniature sets and stuff are.
In Paris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did that specifically to fuck with the Paramount executives. So they had this first shot, and that's what they showed the Paramount executives. And all the executives were sitting there, and one guy even shouted out, "We paid $32 million for this shit. This looks terrible."
There was a fun fact in one of the behind the scenes things that I was watching is they purposely made every set look like something that an uneducated American would think that country would look like. So like Paris was paved with croissants. If you look at the street, it's just a bunch of croissants laid on top of each other and that's what they use for like the cobblestone and stuff. And they put the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, is it called the Louvre? I think the little glass pyramid thing. They put that all in like the same courtyard because that's what Americans think. Oh, that's all in the same neighborhood, right? So I just thought it was really funny because it is intelligent satire of like, they are making fun of Americans as well as everybody else. And it was just kind of like, this is what dumb Americans think Paris looks like. And this is what dumb Americans think Saudi Arabia looks like and stuff like that.
And this is how dumb Americans think terrorist talk.
Yeah. Durka.
Muhammad Jihad.
Go ahead.
I think my favorite part of the movie, though, which I did appreciate, was in the end when they were killing off all the celebrities in the most gruesome, goriest, grossest possible way that they could come up with for each one of them separately. That was good.
You know, the Matt Damon character where every time he's on screen, he's just Matt Damon. Well, when they were getting all the puppets from like the puppet makers, they were going through like looking at them and they came to Matt Damon's puppet and they're like, this doesn't look like Matt Damon. What is this? And they're like, that's Matt Damon. And they're like, why does he look retarded? And
can't say that.
Well, I'm quoting. And Matt and Trey were like, what are we going to do with this puppet? He looks retarded. And Trey Parker was like, well, why don't we just make him retarded? And so like that's where the whole Matt Damon thing came in.
Makes sense. I learned something else when I was watching these documentaries too. You were talking about Alec Baldwin, like finding out that he was going to be a character in the movie and kind of being like, hey, I want in on it. I guess like they didn't get permission to use any of the other They were like, we're just going to put you in the movie and we don't care if you like it or not. So like Ethan Hawke and Helen Hunt and all those characters, like they never asked any permissions to put them.
I don't think they've ever asked, even on South Park.
Yeah, same thing with South Park. They were just like, yeah, you're going to be in it. So.
It's like thing that comes up in front of every I can't talk today. Their thing that comes up in front of every show, their disclaimer.
Yeah.
Says there are celebrity impersonations done in this show very poorly.
They're covered under parody, right?
Yeah, I think so.
They're protected from that. Well, anyway, I don't know. I appreciate this movie for what it was, and I don't really get offended by offensive movies. It's just kind of, but I didn't laugh as much as I thought I was going to. And I was really bummed out because I watched The Patriot, and I freaking love that movie, dude. I don't know, something about Mel Gibson just going full blood rage, like
you
Revenge
love Mel
Quest.
Gibson
We weren't supposed to watch that movie.
I did watch it because I wanted to. See, that's how that works.
Just for joy.
Because I have a lot of time on my hands. And I was like, man, I really wish we could have watched that together because that would have been more fun to talk about. But anyway, we picked Team America. So
well, I find the story behind the making of this movie to be quite interesting.
Yeah. Do you have some more details about it?
I do, actually.
All right, let's get into it.
Basically, like one Saturday morning, Matt and Trey were like hanging out and watching TV, and they came across like the old TV show Thunderbirds. And if you've never heard of Thunderbirds before, it's basically a children's show done with marionettes, but it was like action adventure. Team would go around fighting bad guys, bad puppets, whatever. Yeah. And
evil puppets.
And I guess they were either high or drunk or something like that, and they were watching this and just cracking up at like how like terrible it was.
Yeah.
And they were like, we need to make a movie with puppets. And so they had this idea where at the time they had gotten their hands on the script for another Roland Emmerich film, speaking of The Patriot and Independence Day. It was a film called The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a movie where global warming was the bad guy, basically. And they had gotten their hands on the script, and they're like, what if we did a shot-for-shot remake or, a shot-for-shot parody of The Day After Tomorrow and released it at the same time as this movie comes out, but it's all with puppets.
Can they do that?
Well, apparently the lawyer said no, they can't do that.
Yeah, that seems highly illegal.
So after that idea got shot down, they were like, well, why don't we just, make a puppet movie, but we're going to make a Jerry Brukheimer puppet movie. And so while they were writing the script, basically they would sit down and they'd be like, okay, what would Jerry Brukheimer want the characters to say at this moment? What would a Jerry Brukheimer movie have them do at this moment? So this entire movie is a parody of a Jerry Brukheimer film. I just thought that was hilarious.
It fits.
Yeah, I mean, like it's so stereotypically a Jerry Brukheimer movie if you watch it. But they had a lot of like good nods to other movies. Like there were a couple of nods to The Matrix, some Star Wars references.
Yeah, a ton of Star Wars references.
Yeah, very blatant ones too.
Yeah.
Was it Kill Bill? They had a Kill Bill moment in there. Some Tarantino stuff. And I found it interesting because the one time that I did get to meet Matt Stone.
Where was this?
This was at the Santa Monica Film Festival.
Back in Hollywood.
Yeah. And I was chatting with him, and I had just seen Bowling for Columbine. And it was like, for those of you who haven't seen it, Matt Stone has like a little segment in there where he's interviewed by Michael Moore. And then Michael Moore cuts to like some cartoon footage like later on in the movie that looks very much like South Park. But these guys had nothing to do, like Matt Stone and Trey Parker had nothing to do with it. So Matt Stone like didn't like Michael Moore because he basically twisted his words and made.
Does anybody like Michael Moore?
No.
I don't think so.
But also Matt and Trey are like kind of hardcore libertarians, so they just don't like what he stands for to begin with.
Neither do I.
And so I always find it funny that in this movie that Michael Moore basically just becomes a suicide bomber.
Yeah, he turns into a terrorist.
Suicide bombing communist.
Blows up Mount Rushmore.
And they stuffed his puppet full of ham when they blew him up. That's what you see flying everywhere.
That's nasty.
That thing must have stunk.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And but it's kind of funny because when I was hanging out with Trey's assistant, he'd tell me stories about life on the set, and it was a very stressful shoot. Like they shot the movie over the course of 6 months because on an average day they'd get maybe 6 shots done because of all the logistics of having to work with puppets and stuff like that. It was very laborious. It was very slow going. They were working like 14 to 16 hour days. They had 1 day off in that 6 month time period, and that was on the 4th of July, ironically enough.
Fitting.
Yeah. And my buddy was telling me, it's like, I have a picture of them on set, and you can just see like they're just sitting there like with their faces looking like they just want to die. And in fact, it was so bad that by the end of the shoot, like neither of them ever wanted to make a movie with the other one ever again.
Oh, they were getting in fights with each other?
It wasn't that they were getting in fights; they were just getting sick of each other.
Oh, okay.
They just
too much time together.
Yeah, they were just like like they were blaming each other for having the idea to do this movie. they're like, we don't want to do this anymore. So like it was a $32 million movie over the course of 6 months. They were doing 6 shots a day, working 16 to 18 hours a day, and they had 3 different units shooting at the same time. And neither Matt nor Trey actually got to see the full finished movie until it was already out in theaters because they were working so hard on up to the last minute trying to get these things done.
Yeah, I think it paid off. I mean, the movie's well done on like you said, logistically and with all the props, and they used a lot of forced perspective stuff so that the models would look like they were had some dimension to it. And I think it worked out great. I mean, the movie, for what it's supposed to be, it looks great. And the action is a lot of fun. Having the puppets like bust through walls in Jeeps with the music and all that stuff. Like, it was fantastic.
Can we talk about the music?
Terrifying.
Yes, we can absolutely talk about the music.
That's probably the best part of this movie.
I agree.
Is the soundtrack.
I totally agree. I love the part where they have this like epic, like, the America, fuck, like they have that song playing for like the action scenes. But then
what would you do?
But then they have that same song, but it's written as like a sad
slow ballad.
A slow ballad, and it's the same words like America, fuck yeah,
lick my ass and suck on my ball.
It's just epic. I think one of the moments that I forgot had happened. They were taking the actor and they were trying to make him look like one of the terrorists. And I forgot about this part. And they were like, it was like almost like a face-off moment where they're like, we're going to surgically remove his, change his skin color, make him look just like one of them. And he gets up and he's just got a bunch of patchy freaking pieces of hair and some bad dye on his skin.
That reminded me of when they wanted to make Butters look like a dog.
Yeah.
Take him to the vet. Is that part? Because he had throwing stars stuck in his eyeball.
I like the very first musical number we get is a Broadway show called Lease, where everyone has AIDS.
Oh yeah,
the song's
AIDS.
AIDS.
Which was a
AIDS.
bigger thing in 2004 than it is now.
Yeah.
Well, it was a takeoff on Rent.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like, basically all about people who have AIDS.
God, this movie. I don't know. What do you think if they were to make a part 2 and release it in 2020 or 2021? What do you think the public reception would be?
Firebombs?
They should do
cocktails?
They should have a little Rocket Man, Kim Jong-un, and Trump. Yeah, it'd be great.
It is funny that watching this and it's like, oh, I remember Kim Jong Il.
Yeah.
Now it's Kim Jong Un.
Is it now? I think he's dead. That's the theory.
Do you
going around.
think his sister's in charge?
Yeah, seems like it.
And just the stereotype of him is so good. You fucking guys. I can't even do it right now. Hello, how are you doing?
Can you imagine a puppet Trump doing just all the dumb, like stereotypical Trump things that everybody hates?
Maybe they could get Alec Baldwin to come voice it.
They'd have to have an Elon Musk puppet too.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think he would be on the side of Team America.
Jack Dorsey puppet.
We have Elisa Milano being one of the actors.
She's the president.
Yeah. The president of FAG.
That was such a funny little gag.
Oh, yeah.
The Film Actors
Guild.
Their initials.
And that was another thing that I think we mentioned it already that was very timely today with all these actors with their I take responsibility and singing Imagine to people. It's shut up.
But I mean, it is funny where it's I play a president on TV, therefore I know stuff about politics, so you have to listen to me.
Yeah. My opinion matters more.
It's kind of like taking medical advice from a guy who plays a doctor in a movie.
I never understood why people care about what any of these people have to say.
You remember that whole song that they had in this movie about how bad of an actor Ben Affleck is?
In this movie?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it.
You missed it. It was when he was it was right after he had thrown up and hit rock bottom, and he was driving back to Mount Rushmore, and it was just a song about the movie Pearl Harbor and how bad Ben Affleck was in it.
I like that movie.
It was like Ben Affleck needed an acting coach.
Everybody needs an acting coach.
That's not true.
All right.
Who's your acting coach, voice actor?
Watching YouTube videos of better voice actors.
Oh, clever boy.
Any other final thoughts on this movie? Favorite moments before we move on to Independence Day?
Oh, I want to talk about the puppet sex scene real quick.
Oh, okay. More detailed discussion about the puppet sex scene?
This episode will be NC-17.
So,
what was your favorite puppet
Not
position?
joking, was that so Matt and Trey were so worried about all the other stuff they had going on in this movie that they specifically made the puppet sex scene as terribly raunchy as possible because they wanted the MPAA to focus on that while they were doing the ratings. And so the MPAA came back with an NC-17 rating for the puppet sex scene alone. And so they had to resubmit it 10 times before they were able to cut it down enough to get an R rating for the movie.
So there's a dirtier version of the puppet scene?
Wow.
Wow.
Man, Vader's
That's
head
funny.
just exploded.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Had she been a redheaded puppet, Vader would have died.
And it is funny because in the sex scene, they're doing every porno position you can think of.
Sure.
It's like motorboating her.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
It's really graphic. But it's funny because when you're watching it, you're just they're literally puppets.
Yeah.
They have no genitalia whatsoever.
No.
The guy doesn't even have any either.
Yeah.
No, it's like Ken and Barbie dolls.
Yeah. And it's really that's something.
She's got nipples, though.
But it's kind of all the violence and sex in this movie, it's with puppets.
Yeah.
It's not actual human beings. So why is this such...
Yeah, because you can't show this to a 10-year-old.
Yeah, graphic nature.
Yeah, this
Mommy,
is true.
Daddy, why is that puppet turning that other one upside down?
Yeah, you don't want them doing this with their toys.
But it's funny because outside of America, this was marketed as a family film.
Are you serious?
Yeah. They're like, it's
Those
puppets.
crazy
it's for the whole
Europeans.
family.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. Even in China, because China's super.
I don't think China's box office was open at this time.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure, but I doubt it. I know that there was one country where it was banned from being shown.
That makes sense.
Because of its portrayal of Kim Jong Il or something.
Oh, that makes total sense now.
The French were like, "Oh, this is nothing. We do this at brunch."
Why is that a French vampire?
Yeah, using your nodule.
One sex scene. That's the only accent I do.
Yeah,
It was
you
witches.
do it well, though.
Thanks.
You do it well.
It was witches.
Witches.
So gross.
But I think my
Very
favorite.
gross.
I think my favorite scene in the film was the Kill Bill moment at the end where the puppets are just walking down the hall and then they run into all the actors and they're going to fight.
They cut Helen Hunt in half.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It had some good moments. It really did. It just didn't. I don't know. It didn't strike me as funny as I remember it being. Which again, Matt Vader pointed out very well that I was like 14 when this movie came out, so I was like the perfect age to think it was hilarious. Now I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's all right. But all right. Well, that's our discussion on Team America.
Screw you, Hans Blix.
Before we move on,
Jude was like, is that a puppet shark in there or is that like something real?
Yeah, I was like, do you think that shark was real, or do you think the shark was a puppet too?
Oh, I did like the black cats as the Panthers. That was cute.
I said that. I was like,
you
the
did?
giant cats were hilarious.
I did not catch that.